Tonight we're going to, if you haven't been here, we've been going through the OG stories, the Genesis stories. And so tonight we're going to go through Genesis 4, the Cain and Abel story. And I've subtitled my message, Trust Enough. And we're going to get into that a bit. Now, Cain and Abel are probably the most famous brothers in the world, right? Why are Cain and Abel so famous? The first murderers, right? And why just, this is not a quiz, don't worry, I'm not testing, but just off the top of your head, why did Cain murder Abel? Jealousy. Okay, there's another word I'm looking for that's in the text. Is it anger, right? So in the text, yeah, anger. So at first glance, when you read the story on a surface level, it seems like Cain is angry at Abel because Abel offered a better sacrifice than him, and so in his anger, he killed him. Now, I found that to be a bit of or anger or jealousy, I found that to be a bit of a problem. Remember, we said this last week that a Hebrew person, when he's looking at the Genesis story, what is he looking for? He's looking for problems because he knows those problems are there, and problems is anything that is weird, odd, doesn't quite fit in, doesn't make logical sense, and he's looking for those problems because he knows that those problems are in the story for a reason. In our more modern mindset, we kind of want to skip over problems, or we want to resolve problems as quick as possible and move on. But a Hebrew man is looking for the problem. Now, we have a few siblings here at youth. We have Rain and Eden and Jesse, right? They're siblings. We got Faith and Adriel and MZ. We got Matthew and Donovan, who are two brothers, so literally Cain and Abel. I'm probably going to use you guys as examples a lot tonight. They're not here tonight, but last week we even had the twins, right? Most of us here probably have siblings. Right? I happen to have three brothers. The youngest one is Peter. He's over the back. He's at the back there. He's busy waving. And then I have two older brothers who live elsewhere. Now, if you have siblings, you can relate to this. Siblings have this superpower to annoy you and to frustrate you like no one else can. No one can get me more angry and more upset than one of my brothers can. And there was a season where me and Peter, we used to share a room, which wasn't great because there was a lot of anger, a lot of teasing, a lot of name calling, a lot of fighting, a lot of frustration, a lot of annoying went back and forth between me and Peter. And I'm pretty sure there was probably a time where I said something along the lines of, I could kill you right now, I'm so angry, or so frustrated, or so annoyed at you, right? Because he could get me to the very end of my limits. Right? If you have siblings, you can probably relate to this. If you've shared a room with your siblings, you can definitely relate to this. But even though I was so angry, like angry beyond angry and frustrated to my limits with Peter at times, and I was saying to him, I could kill you right now, the truth is, I was never really anywhere near actually killing Peter, like for real, dead. Because although I'm angry at him, and although I'm frustrated at him, and I know you get angry and frustrated at your siblings, and as angry and as frustrated as you get at your siblings, you still love them. They're still your family. They're still your blood. And so this idea that Cain would be so angry just because Abel outdid him in something that he would respond by killing him makes me wonder, because it's not the norm. But it's not the norm to kill your sibling, whether it's your sister or your brother, out of anger. It does happen. It's happened, I'm sure, in real life, but it certainly isn't the norm. I'd like to believe or hope at least, none of us think it's the norm or would even think it's possible for us to kill one of our siblings out of anger. Right, Matthew? Okay, Matthew's very silent. Donovan, I would lock your door at night. So that begs the question, what is going on? Like, did Cain really just lash out in anger just because Abel did something better? Or is there a deeper reason? Is there something more that's lying within the story as to the reason why Cain murdered Abel? And the story is inviting you, it's inviting us to look a little bit closer, to dig a little deeper, and in the process of discovery, learn a truth that's not only going to sit in our minds that we're going to know, but to learn a truth that's actually going to transform our hearts. Let's start with Genesis 4, chapter 4, verse 1. Now, Adam had sexual relationships with his wife, Eve, and she became pregnant. And when she gave birth to Cain, she said, "With the Lord's help, I have produced a man," or "I have acquired a man. I want to introduce to you the third difference between a Hebrew mindset and a modern mindset, and how a Hebrew man, a Hebrew mindset would read the Genesis stories and how we would. The first one I introduced the first time was questions. Hebrew mindset asks who and why questions. Our modern mindset likes to ask how and what questions. Then last week I introduced the idea of looking for problems. Hebrew mindsets, they look for problems and they dig deep into problems in the story in Genesis. We like to resolve the problems as quick as we can and move on. The third one is the way in which we look at names in the Genesis story. In a more modern mindset kind of way, names are really just ways to identify people. Right? So if you're talking to someone about me, you're gonna say, Joel did this, so and so and so, just so that they know who you're talking about. Like you might say Joel Austin so that they know me apart from all the other Joels that they may know. In other words, my name and my surname just serve as a way to identify me. My surname links me to my family, and my first name separates or identifies me within my family. I was driving the car and I was listening to the radio the other day, and they were asking people to message in and say what the meaning of their name is. How many of us here know the meaning of our name? Okay, we've got quite a few. Right? I actually had to go Google just to make sure I knew the meaning of my names. So I have two names because I've got a middle name. So my full name is Joel Daniel Austin. So you know how I know when my mom's angry at me? When she says Joel Daniel Austin, I know I'm in real trouble. So Joel means God is Lord, and Daniel means God is judge. Now, how many of us place a lot of meaning, a lot of importance, a lot of weight on our names? But I don't. Right? My name is more of just a way to identify me. Right? It's just a way of, it's a way of identifying me. That's the weight and the importance I put on my name. But a Hebrew mindset, in the Genesis stories, names are not just a way of identification. Names are actually there to communicate essence and to communicate the legacy of the person. Names in the Genesis stories are actually seen as things that spoke into the person's destiny and didn't just speak into their destiny, but actually shaped their destiny. So when we look at these stories, we need to take a closer look at the names. Genesis 4 introduces us to a lot of names. In fact, this is the first actual Genesis story where names really become important. We have our first genealogy in the Bible. A genealogy is just a list of names. And so we have Cain's genealogy in verses 17 and 22. In the beginning of the story, right, it starts off with the naming of Cain and Abel. And you're going to see at the end of the story, verse 26, it is mirrored by the naming of Seth and his son Enosh. In other words, the story is trying to scream to us, pay attention to the names, because they are going to play a role in telling the message and the truth in the story. Right, so let's look at the first name, which is Cain. The name Cain means acquisition or to acquire, to acquire. And so when Eve had Cain, she said, with the help of the Lord, I have acquired a man. Let's use an inheritance as an example. If you get an inheritance, right? So we could say you acquire an inheritance, right? Someone leaves you an inheritance. Who's responsible for you acquiring or getting that inheritance? It's not you. It's the person who left you the inheritance that is responsible for you getting the inheritance, right? Because they left it to you. And so this idea of to acquire, it's meant to carry this idea that Cain is meant to know what it means to trust in the Lord to acquire. He's meant to know that acquisition is meant to come as a gift from God with the help of the Lord. And so even like his mother Eve, who said, with the help of the Lord, right? So it wasn't by her own strength, it wasn't by her own might that she acquired Cain, but it was with the help of the Lord that she acquired Cain. So the story is trying to tell us Cain is meant to know that he needs to trust the Lord to acquire what he needs to live. The second name that we're introduced to is Abel. Now, Abel means breath or vapor. And in the Bible, breath and vapor are often linked to this idea of something that's very temporary, it's very quick, it's going to disappear, it's only going to last a short time. In the story, we know Abel is going to get murdered by his brother. In other words, his life is going to be cut short. And so his name's speaking into his destiny, it's speaking into what's going to happen in his life in the story. Genesis 4, parts of verse 2. When they grew up, Abel became a shepherd, while Cain cultivated the ground. Cain was a farmer. I like the version of translation, I think it's in the NIV, that says Cain was a tiller of the soil. And to be a tiller of the soil, to be a farmer, means Cain is going to have a lot of faith and a lot of trust in God. Because Cain needs a lot of things to go right that are out of his control. Right? He needs for his seed, his farming, to be fruitful, to acquire what he needs from his seed that he plants. He needs the sunlight to be right. He needs enough water. He needs the soil to be fertile enough to produce a harvest. He has to worry about wild animals and pests and diseases that can kill his crop. He needs good seed. And on top of all of this, farming is something that takes a while. In other words, there's a long period of time between when you plant the seed and when you get the harvest. And so in this long period of time, there's a whole host of things that could go wrong. And if Cain has bad seed, well, he's only going to find out much later when it's too late. In other words, Cain's name suggests that he needs to learn to trust in the Lord, but his profession also speaks to this idea that Cain should be someone. He should be the person out of all the people, he should be the one the most that is learning how to trust God to acquire what he needs. Cain is meant to be the one that is learning this lesson more so than anyone else in the story. Genesis 4, verse 3 to 5 says this. When it was time for the harvest, Cain presented some of his crops as a gift to the Lord. And Abel also brought a gift, the best portions of the firstborn lambs from his flock. Next slide. The Lord accepted Abel and his gift, but he did not accept Cain and his gift. This made Cain very angry, and he looked dejected. Now, you might want to ask the question, why did God accept Abel and his gift, and why did God reject Cain and his gift? And the story isn't very clear on it. There's nothing before this, there's nothing after this to give us more depth or more context as to why the one gift, the one sacrifice was acceptable and the other wasn't. There is something to be said about the idea that the text does say that Abel gave the firstborn of his flock, and it just says of Cain he gave some of his fruit in the process of time. But there's not much more to go on other than that. In the New Testament, it will later tell us that Abel's sacrifice was better than Cain's, but it doesn't tell us exactly why. And I believe it is because the story doesn't want us to get caught up or focused on the wrong thing. Because the point or the story of Genesis 4 is not trying to tell us how to make the correct or the right sacrifice. There's going to be other stories to tell us how to do that kind of stuff. This story doesn't want us to get caught up in trying to figure out how do I make the right sacrifice, because it's not the aim of the story. There is a different truth. There's a different aim that the story is trying to tell us. Genesis 4, verse 6. And this is where we get to see it come alive. Why are you so angry? The Lord asked Cain. Why do you look so dejected? You will be accepted if you do what is right. This is the picture I get. I kind of get this picture of God just coming to Cain and be like, hey, you're all right. Like, why are you so upset? Why are you so angry? Why is this impacting you so much? You got it wrong, right? You missed the mark, right? You didn't get it right this time, but it's okay, man. Just do the right thing next time. Just get it right next time. It's okay. I still love you. It's almost as if Cain is making a bigger issue out of this thing than God is. And God's almost taken back a little bit by how strongly this whole thing has impacted Cain. Why is Cain so impacted by this? And I believe the answer lies in two words: fear and insecurity. Because when God accepted Abel's gift and not Cain's, Cain bought into this lie, or began to buy into the lie, that God's love, that God's favor is limited. That there's only so much of his love to go around, that there's only so much capacity to God's favor, and that is a problem for Cain. Cain, whose name reminds him that he needs to trust in the Lord to acquire what he needs. He needs the Lord's love, the help, and favor to get what he needs to live. Cain, whose profession daily reminds him that he's so dependent on the Lord's love and favor. But if that love is limited, if that favor is limited, what happens to me if I'm not the one receiving the love or the favor? When God accepted Abel, you see, Cain wasn't just angry because God accepted Abel's gift over him. When God did that, Cain began to believe that God's love went to Abel and was taken away from him. And it produced a deep fear, a deep insecurity in him that someone was able to take, or someone is going to take away God's love and favor that he needs so much. And it's a question, and it's something we all going to have to face. Because there's going to be a lie that's going to be whispered. That God's love is limited. His favor is limited. And so when God gives it to another, it means he's taking it away from someone else. And fear will come and will whisper to you. Things like, unless you're top of your grade, you'll never be able to go to the university you want to go to and study the degree you want to study and get the job that you want to do and do the things you dream of doing. Insecurity might come and whisper things to you like your friends are only with you, they only love you because of that mask that you've put on. And if you don't gossip and belittle this person with you, they might look at you and realize who you are behind the mask, and they're going to start belittling you or leave you. And we forget the narrative of Genesis 1 that it is good. Because we get to begin to buy into the narrative that Cain was buying into, that things are limited, love is limited. And so God gave Abel, or Abel took away God's love and favor that I need. We begin to buy into that things. It begins to tell us we need to prioritize self. We need to prioritize me. And I can't live a life for others. I can't live a life of self-sacrifice for others. Are you crazy? If I do that, they're going to take everything and leave me with nothing. And if I do that, there's going to be nothing left for me. I need to live a life where I'm acquiring, I'm working hard, I'm grafting to get wealth and to get status and to get things and to get influence. Because then when I have those things, when I've acquired those things, when I have power, when I have a status, when I have influence, then I'll have security. Then I'll have peace. Then I'll be happy. Then I'll be satisfied. Then I will be enough. But we forget Genesis 1, that God created us good. That before we did anything, before you acquired anything, God created you good and enough. And so before you earned it, before you acquired it, before you worked towards some status of enough, God already gave it to you because He created you. And He loves you. And when you love for someone, you provide for them. Or we can buy into the fear and the insecurity narrative that turns us into competition mode. Everyone around us is in competition to us. Every time someone else is elevated, I'm lowered. Every time someone else receives a promotion, it's like a demotion to me. Every time someone else is loved or successful, somehow it means I'm less. Or we can trust enough in God's love, trust enough in God's story over us. And this is what God is inviting Cain to remember, that he can trust in God's love for him as he wrestles with this fear and this insecurity. And God even goes as far as to try and reason with Cain and even to warn him. And he says this in his warning to Cain, verse 7. Verse 7. But if you refuse to do what is right, then watch out. Sin is crouching at the door, eager to control you. But you must subdue it and be its master. You see, fear is a root of sin in our lives. Last week I said desire produces sin in us. Pride can produce sin in us. And the third big root I've seen in my own life and in the lives of others is fear and insecurity will produce sin in us. And God warns Cain. He says, this fear is bringing sin right to your door. Listen, if you continue to follow the voice of fear, it's going to open this door for sin that is crouching right at your door. And the moment that door cracks open, sin is going to pounce and devour you. And so God warns Cain about what fear and insecurity, He warns us about what fear and insecurity is going to produce in us. And if we follow that voice, the door will be open and sin will enter. And when sin comes in, it has one job. It's not there to make your life rosy. It's not there to make your life full of sunshine. It's not there to have fun and to make you happy. Sin has one mission, one job. It wants to control you. It wants to subdue you. It wants to devour you. It ultimately wants to kill you, to steal, to kill, and to destroy. And so Cain is faced with a choice. And we're faced with this choice each and every day. To choose trust or to choose fear. And all of us are going to face it day in and day out. Are we going to listen to the voice of fear? We're going to listen to the voice of trust. I wonder which one Cain listened to. Verse 8. One day Cain suggested to his brother, let's go out into the fields. Cain attacked his brother Abel and killed him. Cain listened to the voice of fear and insecurity instead of trust. And one of the things fear will do is fear will turn brothers into enemies. You see, it's a big stretch for me to believe that I could really kill my own brother out of anger. But to kill an enemy out of anger, to make a choice between my life or the life of my enemy, suddenly it becomes very tempting to choose self in that moment. And so what fear will do is it will distort your view of relationships and people. It will turn friends into competition. It will make family and turn and warp them into threats. It will begin to distort your view of people. It will get you to start to think of people as just objects in the way of your acquisition. And if people are just objects in the way of my acquisition of things that I want, then they just need to be removed. It will get you to value people only as much as they benefit you and your acquisition. It will get you to live a life of self rather than self-sacrifice. A life of self-focus rather than a life of other-focused. A selfish life rather than a selfless life. And it is this kind of living, it is this kind of life that keeps the world broken and hurting. It is when we live this way that we are a part of the problem of why the world is broken, rather than partnering with God and choosing to be part of the solution and being partners with Him in putting the world back together. Verse 26. Seth also had a son, and he named him Enosh. And at that time, people began to call on the name of the Lord. Remember at the beginning, I said this story is deeply linked to names. And so the names of the people and the meanings of their name play a role in understanding the message of the story. So let's look at the meaning of the name of Enosh. Enosh, the name, means to be frail or to be mortal. And it comes from the Hebrew word anosh, which literally means to be weak. Now, if you're a frail person, it doesn't take much to hurt you. Right? Frail people can easily be broken or hurt. It doesn't take much power, it doesn't take much force to do so. And so if you're frail, if you're a weak person, right, you have more than normal reason to be afraid, to be fearful, to be insecure. So the story is trying to paint this picture that Enosh is being faced with this choice. He's been faced with fear, insecurity, and he has to decide, is he going to trust the story? Is he going to trust in God's love? Is he going to trust that God's love is more than enough to go around? Or is he going to give in to his fear and his insecurity? It's the same choice that is put before each and every one of us every day. Fear or trust. And it says, at some point, go back to verse 26 for me. So it says, and he named him Enosh, and at that time people began to call on the name of the Lord. Now, let's use this for example. If I'm in my car and I'm driving and my car gets stuck, let's say I ran out of petrol, right? And suddenly now I'm stuck and I need help, right? And I need to call someone to come help me. There's two things about the person that I'm going to call. I'm going to call someone that is able to help me, and I'm going to call someone who I trust will help me. It doesn't help me if I call my mechanic. My mechanic is able to help me, but I'm not so sure if I trust that he will help me. He's probably going to tell me I'm being a bit of an idiot for driving a car without petrol, and I must go take a hike to the petrol station to go get petrol, and I must deal with it. I'm also not going to call my older brother who lives all the way in Jeffreys Bay. Although I trust him fully that he would help me, he would be willing to help me, he's not really able to help me because he's living 3 hours away. So I'm going to call someone who can help me and someone who will help me. And so this idea of if someone calls on the name of the Lord, it means they believe and trust in two things. That God is able to help them and that God will help them because he loves them. And so we're faced with this choice. We can either choose the way of Cain, which is the way of fear, and in the process of time find ourselves in a place we never imagined we would be, doing things we never imagined we would be doing, having our view of people and their value and relationships so distorted that we could even have brothers turn into enemies. Or we can choose the way of Enosh. We can call upon the name of the Lord. We can choose to trust in the story. And so I want to end with this psalm because I feel like it captures the message of the conversation of Genesis 4 so well. We can either choose to try to acquire things for ourselves, to get things for ourselves, or we can choose to trust in God. So Psalms 52 goes something like this. Why do you boast about your crimes, great warrior? Now, a great warrior is someone with power. A great warrior is someone who is strong. A great warrior is someone, if there is anyone who can trust in themselves to acquire and can live life without having to trust in God, you would think it would be a great warrior. Don't you realize God's justice continues forever? All day long you plot destruction. Your tongue cuts like a sharp razor. You're an expert at telling lies. You love evil more than good and lies more than truth. You love to destroy others with your words, you liar. But God will strike you down once and for all. He will pull you from your home and uproot you from the land of the living. And the righteous will see it and be amazed. They will laugh and say, look what happens to mighty warriors. And this is the part I want you to catch, who do not trust in God. They trust in their wealth. They trust in their power. They trust in their influence. People trust in a lot of things these days. Instead, and they grow more and more bold in their wickedness. But I am like an olive tree, thriving in the house of God. I will always trust in God's unfailing love. When you're faced with the choice each and every day, you're going to choose your insecurity, or you're going to choose your fear, or you're going to choose to trust in the unfailing love of Jesus. Are you going to choose to trust that He has your daily bread. In other words, He has what you need for that day. That whatever the insecurity is telling you that you lack, that you can find all that you need in Christ. When the fear says unless you acquire, unless you have, unless you do A, B, and C, something bad will happen, you can trust in God's protection and provision. I will praise you forever, O Lord, O God, for what you have done. I will trust in your good name. You can either call on your own name or on the name of someone else. In other words, try and make your own plan, make your own way. Or you can call on the name of God, which means to trust in Him, to trust in His love, to trust in His story. I will call on your good name in the presence of your faithful people. I pray for everyone here tonight, Lord, that when we face fear, when we face insecurity, when we face the lie that somehow there's a lack, there's a limit to your love, there's a lack and a limit to this life, and unless we do whatever we have to, no matter the cost, no matter what it does to someone else, we have to acquire this thing to have this. When we're faced with that decision, when we're faced with that challenge, when we're faced with that lie, that we'd be able to put our trust in you instead, to place our trust in you, and that you have all that we need, that your love is more than enough, that we would trust enough in your love, we would trust enough in your faithfulness, we would trust enough in your goodness. Teach my heart to trust enough in you, God. Teach us to trust enough in you, Lord. We need you, oh God. When the fear comes knocking, when the insecurity comes knocking, Lord, teach my heart to trust in you instead. Teach my heart to turn to you instead. Teach my heart to listen to the narrative of trust rather than the narrative of fear. I pray that that'll be all of us, Lord, that we would learn to trust in you. Amen.